Savannah at night, streetlights dripping gold, ocean air salted and sharp. And beneath an old hanging oak, a low whimper slips through the wind like a prayer half swallowed. Jack Walker is 60, a retired Navy SEAL, a man who thought his heart had already clocked out for good. Then he sees Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd, caked in mud, one leg dragging, eyes still bright like a blade that refused to break. No barking, just that steady look that says, "If you're decent, prove it." Jack kneels, and Rex sneezes right on his boot. Jack almost smiles. That's one way to say hello, soldier. And then, laughter. Dry. Mean. From the end of the street, Troy Maddox and his crew step out of the shadows. Troy points at Rex and says, "Old man, that dog is mine." Jack doesn't brag about the past. He just stands there. Rex takes one step forward, silent, controlled. And somehow that silence makes the thugs swallow hard, because they can feel it. Tonight, this dog isn't prey, he's a warning. The whimper beneath the hanging oak. Warm Savannah air drifted through mossy oaks, and the street lights turned the damp cobblestones into slow-moving gold. Jack Walker stepped out of Coastal Family Clinic with a small paper bag in his left hand and a weight in his chest that no scan could photograph. He was 60, broad-shouldered, and the way men stay broad when they once carried heavy packs for a living, even after the living changes. His hair had gone steel gray, cut short out of old habit, and his jaw was squared like it had learned to argue with storms. A trimmed salt and pepper beard hugged his face, not stylish, just practical. As if shaving felt like wasting time, he didn't trust life to give back. People looked at Jack and assumed calm. They didn't see the quiet tension in his hands, the faint tremor he controlled by curling his fingers around the bag until the paper crinkled like dry leaves. They didn't see how his eyes, pale and watchful, never stopped measuring exits, corners, reflections in glass. That was the aftertaste of being a Navy SEAL. The body retired, but the instincts kept clocking in. He didn't talk about it. He didn't need to. His silence carried the shape of things he'd buried. Inside the bag were routine things, vitamins, a printed summary, a reminder to reduce stress, as if stress were a faucet you could tighten with a polite twist. The doctor had smiled too brightly, the way people smiled at men who looked tough but were aging, as if kindness could patch over the truth. Jack walked anyway, because walking was something he could still do without remembering anyone's name on a memorial wall. Savannah's historic district moved around him like an old song, slow, sentimental, a little haunted. The air smelled of salt and magnolia, of wet brick and last night's rain. Spanish moss hung from the oaks like gray-green curtains, as if the city itself preferred soft lighting for hard stories. Jack didn't head straight home. He never did after appointments. Home had too many quiet corners, so he drifted toward a small square where a massive oak leaned over a bench like a patient guardian. That was when he heard it. Not a bark, not a shout, a sound smaller than pride, but bigger than fear. A low, broken whimper that seemed to snag on the wind and tear. Jack stopped. His boots didn't scrape. His body froze the way it had frozen on night operations, when sound could mean death and stillness could mean survival. He listened again. There it was. Faint, urgent, close. Under the oak, half hidden in shadows and mossfall, something large shifted against the earth. A dog. Not a puppy. Not a little stray with ribs like piano keys. This was a full-grown German shepherd, traditional working line build, powerful, even in collapse. He was about 5 years old by the look of him. Mature face, intelligent eyes, the kind of dog that didn't play at being brave. His coat was thick and double-layered, gray-black saddle over tawny legs, but it was smeared with mud as if he'd crawled through a storm to reach this spot. One hind leg dragged at an angle that made Jack's gut tighten. There was dried blood near the paw and a fresh scrape along the hip. But the eyes were the thing. They weren't pleading in a helpless way. They were steady, dignified, a soldier's eyes. If soldiers had fur. The dog watched Jack like a judge who still hoped the accused might turn out decent. Jack's breath left him in a careful exhale. His first instinct was to close distance. His second instinct, the wiser one, was to slow down. A wounded animal could bite from panic. A traumatized animal could bite from memory. Jack understood both categories. He'd met men who bit with words. He'd met his own mind at night, baring teeth at shadows. He took 2 steps, then stopped again, letting the dog read him. The dog didn't growl. He didn't lift his lip. He simply held Jack's gaze, motionless, except for the tremble in his rib cage where pain lived. Jack crouched, knees complaining quietly. His joints had started bargaining with him in recent years, asking for more rest than his pride wanted to pay. He placed the paper bag on the ground like an offering, palms open, empty. "Easy," he said, voice low. The dog's ears twitched, not fear, attention. Jack studied him the way he used to study waves before a night swim, looking for danger, looking for timing, looking for what the surface didn't confess. There was a faint indentation around the dog's neck, like a collar had been too tight, or a rope had been worse. That detail hit Jack like cold water. Somebody had held this animal too hard. Jack felt something old stir in him, something he'd tried to retire along with the uniform, the refusal to walk past suffering and call it not my problem. He shifted slightly to the side so he didn't loom. He kept his hands where the dog could see them. "Steady, buddy," Jack murmured, and the words surprised him because they sounded like the words he used to say to men in rough weather. "You're okay. I got you." The dog's nostrils flared. He sniffed the air, then focused on Jack's boots. His gaze flicked to the bag, then back up, as if calculating whether this human was real help or just another kind of trap. Jack offered the simplest truth he had. "Calm down, warrior." The dog's head tilted, just slightly. And then fate, apparently amused by drama, decided to add a punchline. The German Shepherd inhaled, held it a beat, and sneezed. A full, wet, unapologetic sneeze right onto Jack's boot. For a moment, the world paused on that ridiculous note, like a violinist slipping on stage. Jack blinked. Then the corner of his mouth lifted, not into a smile exactly, but into the shadow of one. The kind of expression that had once belonged to a younger man, before he learned what loss costs. "Well," Jack said softly, "that's one way to say hello." The dog huffed again, almost offended by his own weakness, and tried to push himself up. His injured leg failed him. He slumped back with a quiet grunt that was half pain, half stubbornness. Jack's grin faded, replaced by something gentler and more dangerous: purpose. He reached into his pocket for his phone. But he didn't move closer yet. He kept his body low, his voice steady, his presence non-threatening. "All right, Rex," he said, naming him without permission, because sometimes names were a rope you threw someone drowning. "We're going to do this the right way." The dog stared, as if weighing that promise. Then, somewhere beyond the square, Jack heard another sound, not the dog this time. A laugh, dry, distant, the kind of laugh that didn't belong to joy. Jack's spine tightened, and his eyes lifted toward the dark end of the street. The city's warm night suddenly felt like it had teeth, and Rex, still lying under the oak, shifted his gaze the same direction. Not fear. Warning. The wound. The snare. And the seal's memory. Jack stayed kneeling under the hanging oak, but his mind stood up straight. That far-off laughter didn't come closer, not yet. Yet it had already changed the air. The square still looked like a postcard. Moss swaying, lamplight honeyed, the cobblestones slick from earlier rain. But to Jack, the scene had shifted into something older and sharper, like the moment before a door gets kicked in. Rex lay on his side, breathing hard through his nose. Up close, the dog was even bigger than Jack first thought. Classic German Shepherd frame, deep chest, strong shoulders. A working animal, built for long days and longer loyalty. His muzzle was broad with black shading, and the fur around his eyes made them look as if they were lined in ink. Every time his injured leg twitched, his ears flicked, but he refused to cry out again. Pride lived in him like bone. Jack's gaze tracked the faint indentation around Rex's neck. It wasn't from a normal collar. It was uneven, tight in places, rubbed raw in others, like something had cinched down when Rex fought it. A rope, a snare. Jack swallowed. In the old part of him, trained to stay calm when panic would be easier, took control. He shifted his weight, slow and careful, and slid the paper bag farther away so it wouldn't rustle. His phone was already in his hand. He didn't call 911, not yet. Experience had taught him that danger didn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wore a grin and waited for you to relax. Jack took off his jacket. The night wasn't cold, but Rex was trembling in a way that wasn't just pain. Jack draped the jacket over the dog's back like a blanket, leaving the head uncovered so Rex wouldn't feel trapped. Easy. Soldier. Jack murmured again, and it came out like a prayer with sand in it. Rex's eyes locked onto his, a long stare, not friendly, not hostile, an inspection. "Are you leaving?" Jack answered without words. He stayed. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his back pocket, folded with the neatness of habit, and reached toward Rex's injured leg. Rex tensed, muscles knotting beneath his coat. Jack paused. "You're in charge here," he told the dog softly. "You say when." The dog's nostrils flared. He sniffed Jack's hand, then exhaled, a sound like reluctant permission. Jack gently lifted the paw. The blood was mostly dried, but there was something wrong, something catching the light when he angled it toward the street lamp. A small, cruel piece of metal lodged near the pad, like a jagged hook. Jack's jaw tightened. "Someone tried to hold you," he whispered. "And you didn't agree." Rex's ears flattened for a second, not in fear, more like memory biting him from behind. Jack wrapped the handkerchief around the paw, snug but not tight, and tied it off with a simple knot. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be. Age had added a faint tremble, a reminder that time always collects its debt. But his movements were careful, precise. The kind of precision you learn when mistakes cost lives. He pressed the phone to his ear and searched for a number he'd saved months ago but never used. A local vet clinic in Savannah that did after-hours calls. The line rang twice. A woman answered, her voice crisp but not cold, like someone who'd learned to sound calm while chaos happened behind her. "Carter Veterinary, this is Dr. Emily Carter." Jack closed his eyes for a heartbeat, thankful for competence in the world. "Doctor." "Carter," he said. "My name's Jack Walker. I'm in Chippewa Square. I've got an injured German Shepherd with what looks like a snare mark and a piece of metal in his paw. He's stable, but he needs help." There was a pause, just long enough for her to switch from person to professional. "Is he bleeding actively?" she asked. "Not much," Jack said. "Mostly dried. He's alert, in pain. He's not aggressive, but he's scared." "Good," she replied, and Jack could hear movement on her end. Keys, drawers. The quick, practiced rhythm of preparation. "Keep him warm. Don't try to remove the metal. Can you transport him?" "I can," Jack said, then glanced down at Rex. The dog's gaze flicked to the street again, to that distant darkness where the laughter had come from. "But I'd rather not move him until I'm sure we're alone." Emily's voice lowered slightly, the way a careful person speaks when they sense a second story. "Are you being followed?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He studied the mud around Rex. Fresh tracks, newer than the rain. And there, faint but clear. Tire marks cut through the wet grit near the curb. His stomach tightened. "Maybe," he said. Emily didn't ask for drama. She didn't tell him to man up. She simply said, "I'm coming to you. 10 minutes. Stay where you are. And if anything changes, call the police." Jack pocketed the phone and exhaled through his nose. 10 minutes could be an hour when trouble decided to sprint. He scanned the square the way he used to scan shorelines. Benches, alleys, parked cars, reflections in shop windows. A couple walked a small white dog on a leash, laughing softly, unaware of the tension coiling in Jack's shoulders. A man sat on a bench scrolling his phone, face lit ghost blue. Ordinary life, strolling right past the edge of something sharp. Jack looked at Rex again. The dog's eyes were calmer now, but still watchful. His breathing slowed, though pain still pulled at his muscles. Under the lamplight, the snare mark on his neck looked uglier, like a ring of shame someone had tried to claim him with. Jack felt anger rise, hot and clean. He hadn't felt anger like that in years. Not the wild kind, the focused kind, the kind that built bridges and broke chains. He shifted closer, still careful, and spoke low. "I don't know what they did to you," he told Rex, "but I know this. Nobody owns you." Rex blinked once, slow. A response. Jack's eyes caught a glint near Rex's neck, half hidden under fur. Not a collar, not a tag, something else. A thin strip of frayed nylon, like part of a tether that had snapped. Jack reached for it, then stopped. Rex's eyes widened a fraction. Jack withdrew his hand. "All right," he said quietly. "Not yet." That's when the wind carried something new. Engine noise, low and approaching. Tires rolling slow, as if the driver didn't want to be noticed. Jack's spine tightened again. He shifted his body, placing himself between Rex and the street, like a human shield. The engine sound faded, then returned, closer. A vehicle circling. Rex's ears lifted. His head turned toward the curb. A low rumble began in his chest. Not a growl meant for show, but a warning meant for survival. Jack kept his voice calm, though his pulse was picking up. "Easy," he murmured. Not yet. In his mind, he was back on dark water, night swallowing everything, listening for the smallest betrayal of sound. Then headlights briefly swept across the square, white beams sliding over moss, benches, and finally over Jack's boots, over Rex's covered body. The car didn't stop, but it slowed. Just enough. As if someone inside wanted to confirm what they'd come for. Jack didn't move. He didn't wave. He didn't challenge. He simply watched. And when the headlights passed, he saw it clearly in the mud near the curb. A fresh tire track, and beside it, the print of a boot. Not a tourist sneaker, a heavy tread, purposeful, recent. Jack's throat tightened. 10 minutes, he reminded himself. Hold the line for 10 minutes. He looked down at Rex and met those soldier eyes again. Rex didn't whimper this time. He stared toward the street like a sentinel, as if he, too, understood the rule of the night. The real danger wasn't the wound. The real danger was whoever came back to claim it. The thugs returned, and the quiet threat called Rex. Doctor. Emily Carter arrived in a beige SUV that looked too clean for midnight work, its headlights cutting through the moss-draped darkness like two steady eyes. She stepped out with the kind of speed that didn't feel rushed, just practiced. Emily was in her late 30s, slim but sturdy. The way someone becomes sturdy after lifting too many frightened animals onto exam tables. Her hair was chestnut brown, twisted into a messy bun that had clearly been done in a hurry. Freckles dusted her pale cheeks, and her gaze was sharp behind rectangular glasses that kept sliding down her nose whenever she moved too fast. She took one look at Rex, and her face softened, then tightened again in concentration. "All right," she said, voice low. "Big guy, I'm not here to hurt you." Rex's ears tracked her like radar. His body tensed beneath Jack's jacket, but he didn't snap. He watched her hands, watched the medical bag, watched the way she kept a respectful distance. Jack rose slowly, feeling the protest in his knees. "He's got metal in the paw," he said, "and a snare mark." Emily crouched, careful not to block Rex's view of the street. "You did right not pulling it," she replied. "We'll sedate him at the clinic if we need to, but we're not doing this here." Jack followed her eyes toward the curb where the fresh tire marks cut through wet grit. "You saw it too," he murmured. Emily nodded once. "Someone circled us. I called a friend at dispatch when you said you might be followed. We have a window, but it's a small one." She pulled out a lightweight muzzle, soft fabric, not the cruel kind, and held it up for Rex to sniff. Rex gave it one disgusted look, as if offended by the very idea. Emily's mouth twitched. "Okay." Message received. Jack crouched again, lowering his voice to Rex the way you speak to a proud man who's been injured. "Rex," he said, "I need you to trust me for 2 minutes. You can hate me after." The dog's gaze flicked to Jack's face, then to Emily, then back to the street. The calculation behind his eyes was almost human. He exhaled. A decision. Emily slid a padded sling under Rex's chest and belly, and Jack took the other end. Together they lifted him, slow, steady. Rex growled once, not at them, but at pain itself, like he wanted to bite the universe for being unfair. They moved him toward the SUV. Emily opened the back door, revealing a folded blanket and a crate liner. It wasn't luxurious, but it was safe. Rex hesitated at the threshold. Jack leaned close, his voice a low anchor. "In," he said gently. "You're not going back to whoever put that mark on your neck." Rex stepped in, trembling, and lay down as if surrendering, only because surrender was temporary. Emily shut the door and exhaled. "Okay," she said. "Now we leave like we belong here." They pulled away from the square, the SUV rolling over cobblestones with a soft, steady hum. Jack sat in the passenger seat, angled slightly so he could see Rex through the rearview mirror. The dog's eyes stayed open, fixed on the back window, watching Savannah slide away in golden streaks. Emily drove with both hands on the wheel, calm but alert. "You military?" she asked after a moment, not looking at him, just reading him. "Used to be," Jack said. "Figured," she replied. "You move like someone who's had to be quiet on purpose." Jack didn't answer. Silence was easier than explaining. They didn't go to Jack's house. Emily took a route that cut through quieter streets, past shuttered shops and sleeping porches, then turned toward her clinic, a modest building with a glowing sign that read, "Carter Veterinary," in soft blue letters. Inside, the clinic smelled like antiseptic and warm fur. A single lamp glowed over the front desk, and somewhere in the back, a dryer hummed, as if even the machines were trying to soothe the night. Emily guided Jack to the treatment room, where she slid on gloves and checked Rex's vitals with fast, gentle hands. Rex stiffened when the stethoscope touched his chest, then relaxed a fraction when Emily murmured steady nonsense, soft words that meant nothing but safety. "You're a brave idiot," she told him fondly. "And I mean that as a compliment." Jack almost laughed. Almost. Emily cleaned around the paw without removing the metal yet. "He's tough," she said, "but this is going to hurt if we do it awake." Rex's ears lifted at the word hurt, as if he understood it perfectly. Jack stepped closer, but kept his hands visible. "He won't bite you," he said. "More promise than fact." Emily glanced at Rex, then at Jack. "He might bite someone else," she said, "and I wouldn't blame him." She prepared a mild sedative, explaining each step as if the explanation mattered to Rex as much as to Jack. Then she paused. "Before we do this," Emily said, lowering her voice, "you should know something." Jack's stomach tightened. "What?" Emily nodded toward Rex's neck. Under the fur, partially hidden, was a faint tattoo-like mark. Numbers, crude and amateur, as if someone had tried to brand property onto living flesh. "I've seen that before," Emily said, not common. It's tied to dog fighting rings or guard dog operations, people who treat animals like weapons. Jack's jaw tightened, so that's why they circled us. Emily's eyes hardened.
Yes.
And it means they won't just shrug and walk away, as if the universe liked timing. There was a sound outside. Tires on gravel, slow and deliberate. Then another sound, a knock at the front door. Not a polite knock, a knock with entitlement. Jack's body went still. Old instincts snapped into place like a knife opening. Emily froze mid-motion, syringe in hand. Rex's head lifted, ears forward. A low rumble started in his chest, deeper now, steadier. Like thunder deciding whether to break. A voice came through the glass, muffled but clear enough. "Open up," it said. "We're here for our dog." Jack's eyes met Emily's, and in that moment, the clinic, bright, clean, safe, felt like a ship in dark water. Emily swallowed, her freckles paling under the fluorescent light. Jack's voice dropped to a calm that had once crossed oceans. "Who is it?" he asked. Emily glanced at the small security camera monitor near the desk. Her breath caught. Outside stood a man with a lean, sharp face and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a worn leather jacket and held himself like someone used to getting his way. His hair was dark and slicked back, and his hands were too relaxed for a midnight visit. Emily's voice came out as a whisper. "That's Troy Maddox." Troy leaned toward the glass as if he could smell fear. Behind him, two other men waited near a dark pickup truck. Broad-shouldered silhouettes, arms crossed, faces half hidden under hooded sweatshirts. They looked less like friends and more like tools. Troy raised his hand and knocked again, harder. Rex stood up inside the treatment room. Sedative not yet given. Pain ignored. He didn't lunge. He simply moved to the front of the room, placing himself between the door and Jack, like a living wall. Jack looked down at the dog and felt something almost mythic rise in his chest, like fate had sent him a partner instead of a burden. He stepped forward, slow and steady, and said to Emily without taking his eyes off the monitor, "Call the police." Then he added, voice quiet but edged with iron, "And don't worry, they came for a dog." Jack's lips barely moved as he finished the thought. They're leaving with a warning. The storm, the river warehouse, and a chase without gunfire. The first raindrops hit Carter Veterinary like fingertips testing a locked door. They made tiny, polite taps on the glass, then grew bold, hammering harder as the wind rolled in from the marsh. Savannah didn't do storms halfway. It dressed them in drama, clouds thick as iron wool, Spanish moss thrashing like wet hair, streetlights blinking as if they were reconsidering their job. Inside, the clinic felt suddenly small. Emily's hands moved fast as she pressed her phone to her ear, voice tight but controlled. "Dispatch, this is Dr. Carter. I have trespassers threatening my staff and a patient."
"Yes."
"Now." Carter Veterinary on Abercorn. Jack didn't watch her. He watched the door through the security monitor. Troy Maddox lingered under the awning like a man enjoying a show. He wasn't big, but he carried himself like a blade, lean, sharp. And sure, he could cut. Water slicked his slicked-back dark hair, and his leather jacket shined like something that didn't belong in a storm. His grin stayed fixed, a cheap coin he kept flipping in his mouth. Behind him, his two men shifted their weight by the pickup truck. One was thick-necked and square, with a shaved head and a heavy jaw that looked like it had been punched into that shape. The other was taller and narrower, with a twitchy kind of energy. The sort of man who always looked like he wanted to be somewhere else unless trouble was involved. Their faces were half hidden by hoodies, but their posture said enough. Hired muscle, not friends. Rex stood in the treatment room, pain carried like armor. His coat bristled along the spine, and his eyes, those disciplined soldier eyes, never left the hallway leading to the front door. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. The low rumble in his chest was not noise. It was weather. Emily lowered her phone and swallowed. Police are on their way, she whispered. But, Jack, if they break in... They won't, Jack said. It wasn't bravado. It was assessment. He scanned the clinic quickly. The narrow hallway. The back exit marked staff only. The supply room. The metal exam table. The rolling cart with instruments. He noticed the fire extinguisher by the door. The mop bucket. The stack of folded towels. Ordinary objects, but in Jack's mind, ordinary things were never just ordinary. They were tools, angles, options. Troy knocked again, harder. The glass shivered. Jack stepped toward the front desk, slow, visible, unhurried. He didn't hide. Men like Troy fed on panic. Jack offered none. He flipped the clinic's open sign to closed, an almost comical gesture, like putting up an umbrella in a hurricane. Then he walked to the door and spoke through it. Voice, even. This isn't your dog. Troy leaned close, fogging the glass with his breath. Old man, he called. Loud enough to be heard even through the storm. You're gonna make this difficult. Jack's eyes stayed flat. You're already difficult. A flash of irritation crossed Troy's face, just a flicker, but it showed. He didn't like being answered like an equal. He tilted his head, studying Jack through the glass, and the grin returned. Listen, Troy said, softer now, as if offering reason. That dog bites. He's dangerous. He belongs to me. I'm doing you a favor. Jack's gaze cut sideways toward Rex, then back to Troy. Funny, Jack said, because he's been nothing but disciplined since I met him. Troy's smile thinned. You don't know what he is. Jack almost nodded. I do. I know exactly what he is. A threat, Troy's eyes seemed to say. Jack's face didn't change. Outside, Troy's men shifted. The thick-necked one moved to the side of the building, as if checking windows. The taller one stayed near the truck, scanning the street for police lights. Emily appeared beside Jack, her freckles stark under the fluorescent glow. She held a phone in one hand and a trembling breath in the other. Jack spoke without turning. Get Rex ready to move. Emily hesitated. He needs the metal removed. He needs not to be stolen. Jack said quietly, we can treat him somewhere else if we have to. Rex's head turned slightly, ears pricked. He understood movement. Emily nodded once, then hurried back. Jack kept his eyes on Troy, but his mind ran a second conversation with the storm and the building. Police response time, possible entry points, the back exit, the narrow alley behind the clinic that led toward the river road, older, less literature, and more dangerous. Then the power flickered. The lights hummed, dimmed, brightened again. Outside, Troy laughed, delighted. See, he called. Even the building's scared. Jack didn't reply. He simply reached under the desk and found Emily's spare set of keys hanging on a hook. She'd pointed them out earlier, almost as an afterthought. Jack pocketed them. Emily returned, breathing hard. Rex limped beside her, refusing the sling now. His pride had decided he would walk, even if Emily's voice shook. Back door is clear. Jack nodded. We go. A delivery truck, too big for that narrow street, skidded past the clinic, tires screaming on wet pavement. It fishtailed, missed the curb by inches, and vanished into the rain. The storm swallowed it like a myth swallowing a foolish hero. Rex flinched. Then, without thinking, shifted his body between Jack and the front windows. It was instinct. It was loyalty. Raw and untrained in kindness, but real. Jack felt something twist in his chest, not pain. Something like gratitude mixed with grief. All right, he murmured to Rex. I see you. They slipped through the staff corridor toward the back. Emily led, holding a flashlight that cut a thin white blade through the dim. Jack followed, hand on Rex's shoulder, not gripping, just guiding. Rex's muscles were tense but steady, like a rope pulled tight. They pushed through the back door into the alley. The wind hit them like a slap. Rain came sideways, stinging. The alley smelled of wet brick and old trash and the faint sourness of river water. A few trash bins rattled like loose bones. The world felt emptied out, as if everyone sensible had gone home and locked their doors. They moved fast, keeping close to the wall. Then, from the corner of the building, a shadow detached itself. The thick-necked thug, up close. His face was blunt and pale, with broken capillaries on his nose and the tired eyes of someone who had learned to be cruel for a paycheck. He held a stun baton, cheap, illegal, buzzing faintly like an angry insect. Well, he said, voice thick. Where you think you're going? Emily gasped. Jack didn't. Rex did something that felt both beautiful and terrifying. He stepped forward, placing himself between the man and Jack, head low, shoulders squared. He still didn't bark. He just stood there. The thug raised the baton. Jack's voice cut through the rain, calm as a command on a dark deck. Don't. The thug hesitated, because something in Jack's tone suggested consequences, but not enough. He lunged. Rex snapped, not at the man's flesh, but at the baton, clamping down on the buzzing weapon with iron jaws. Electricity crackled, and Rex's body jolted. Jack's heart slammed. Rex held on anyway. Jack moved in a blur, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting, not breaking, not maiming, just controlling. The baton fell. Jack kicked it away into a puddle where it fizzed and died like a foolish spark. The thug stumbled back, clutching his wrist, eyes wide. Rex swayed, panting. But he stayed upright. Jack knelt, hands on Rex's neck, searching for burn marks. You idiot, Jack whispered, voice rough with something like love. Brave idiot. Emily's eyes shone with tears that rain could hide. We have to go, now, from the street beyond the alley. Troy's voice roared, furious. There, footsteps splashed toward them. Jack stood, body blocking Rex. He didn't look for a fight. He looked for a path. He saw it. An open side gate leading toward the river road, half latched, banging in the wind like a door begging to be used. Move, Jack said. Emily ran first. Rex limped after, dragging pain like a chain. Jack followed, last. As always. They burst through the gate into the open, where the river air hit like cold truth. Ahead, a long stretch of road led toward old warehouses, dark hulks by the water, smelling of oil and rotten wood. Behind them, Troy's men poured into the alley like wolves. Jack didn't draw a weapon. He didn't have one. He had a storm, a mind trained for escape, and a dog who had just proven he was not prey. And as they ran toward the river warehouses, Rex reached back with his teeth and caught the cuff of Jack's sleeve, not pulling hard, just tugging, as if saying, go, not to fight, to live. Truth uncovered, and the gentle kind of victory. Rain chased them to the river like a jealous god, snapping at their heels and turning the road into black glass. The warehouses ahead rose from the storm like sleeping beasts, long, low buildings of corrugated metal and rotting timber, their windows dark, their gutters overflowing. Jack ran with a measured pace that looked almost unfair for a 60-year-old man. He moved like someone who had learned the difference between speed and waste. Emily kept up, because fear can lend a person strength they didn't know they owned. Her chestnut hair coming loose from its bun and sticking to her freckled cheeks. Her glasses fogging as she breathed hard. Rex limped between them. Every step, a stubborn insult to pain. His thick coat was soaked, and his ears flattened against wind, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the shadows as if counting threats the way Jack counted exits. He still carried the faint bruise-like ring around his neck, and now, beneath the wet fur, the crude number mark looked darker, as if the storm itself wanted it seen. They reached the nearest warehouse and slipped inside through a side door that hung slightly ajar, banging softly in the gusts, like a warning bell. The air within was colder and smelled of oil, river mud, and old wood that had been damp too long. The sound changed. Rain became a distant roar. Footsteps became louder. Breath became louder. Guilt became louder. Emily fumbled for her phone, hands shaking, while Jack's gaze adjusted to the dim. A single emergency light glowed red above an exit sign, making everything look like it belonged in a nightmare's darkroom. "Emily," Jack said quietly, "stay behind me. If you see a clear way out, you take it." She swallowed, nodding without argument. She wasn't foolish brave. She was the kind of brave that shows up anyway. Rex lowered his head and sniffed the concrete, then stiffened. His hackles rose. Jack followed the line of Rex's attention and saw it. Scuff marks, tire tracks that didn't belong inside, a trail of muddy footprints leading deeper into the building. This wasn't just a random hiding place. This place had been used, recently, behind them, outside. Troy's voice cut through the storm, harsh and close. "You can't hide forever. That dog's mine." Jack didn't answer. He never answered men who wanted a stage. He guided Emily and Rex deeper into the warehouse, moving along stacked pallets and rusted shelving. Somewhere, a loose chain clinked softly in the wind. The building felt alive in a wrong way, as if it remembered what had happened inside it and didn't want to tell. Then Rex's paw slipped, and he gave a small, involuntary whine. Not fear, just the body confessing. Jack's stomach tightened. The dog had already taken a shock. He was running on loyalty and willpower now, and those were not infinite resources. Jack crouched and checked Rex's mouth and gums with a quick glance, the way he used to check a teammate's face in red light. Rex's breathing was faster, but his eyes stayed clear. "Stay with me," Jack murmured. "Almost there." Emily found her voice again. "Jack, police." A siren answered her before she could finish. Distant, but real, slicing through the rain, like hope with sharp edges. Then another, and another. Blue lights flickered through cracks in the warehouse slats, painting the darkness with moving color. Troy heard it too, outside. His confidence cracked just a little. "Forget it," he barked at his men. "Grab the dog and go." Footsteps thundered near the door. A beam of light swept inside. Jack pulled Emily behind a stack of crates, and Rex, hurt as he was, shifted his body so he was between Jack and the approaching silhouette. That silent discipline again. That controlled threat. Not wild aggression. A message. I am not easy prey. A man stepped in. One of Troy's crew. The taller, twitchy one, holding a flashlight and a crowbar. Up close, he looked younger than his swagger. Maybe late 20s. With a thin mustache and a nervous jaw that never stopped chewing air. His eyes darted like a trapped animal's, and Jack recognized the type. Not a leader, not a thinker, just a follower, desperate to prove he mattered. The man swung the flashlight beam across the crates. Rex's muscles coiled. Jack's hand touched Rex's shoulder, not to restrain, but to steady. "Not yet," he breathed. The man took one more step, and Rex moved, fast, precise, controlled. He didn't fly at the man like a monster. He lunged just enough to force distance, teeth snapping inches from the crowbar hand. A warning so clean it might as well have been spoken in English. The man stumbled backward, swore, and raised the crowbar before he could swing. A voice boomed from outside, amplified by the warehouse walls. "Savannah police, drop it and step out." The twitchy man froze, then bolted, panic choosing for him. More footsteps, more lights. Officers flooded the entrance, their voices firm, trained, not cruel. The storm rushed in with them, as if the rain itself wanted to witness justice. Officer Ryan Mitchell was the first face Jack saw clearly. He was in his early 40s, tall and solid, with dark skin and a shaved head that glistened under rainwater. His eyes were steady and tired in the way good cops' eyes often are. Eyes that have seen too much and learned to keep compassion behind armor. A neatly trimmed goatee framed his mouth, and his posture carried authority without arrogance. He scanned the room, then locked onto Jack, Emily, and Rex. "Sir," Ryan called, voice loud enough to cut through chaos. "Are you hurt?" Jack raised his hands, palms open. "We're okay," he answered. "Dog's injured. They're here for him." Ryan's gaze flicked to Rex, even in dim light. Rex looked imposing, tall, broad, soaked, eyes bright. Ryan didn't flinch. Instead, he softened his tone, like a man who understood fear and refused to feed it. "All right," Ryan said. "We're gonna end this clean." Outside, Troy was shouting again, but it had changed. It wasn't confident now, it was frantic. Officers moved with purpose, voices giving commands, boots splashing, radios crackling. Troy tried to slip between the warehouse and the river road, but the storm betrayed him. Mud sucked at his shoes, and blue lights boxed him in. Ryan stepped closer to Jack, lowering his voice. "We got a call about threats at a veterinary clinic," he said, "and we caught a pickup matching the description circling this area. You mind telling me what happened?" Jack didn't embellish. He didn't dramatize. He gave the truth the way SEALs give coordinates. Clear. Exact. Hard to argue with. He mentioned the snare mark, the metal in Rex's paw, the attempt to take the dog, the baton, the chase. Emily added what she'd seen at the clinic, especially the crude number marking. "That's not a pet owner's mark," she said, voice trembling but firm. "That's ownership through cruelty." Ryan nodded, jaw tightening. "We'll check the cameras." That was the part Troy didn't know had already condemned him. The warehouse had old security cameras, dusty, half forgotten, but still working. A small monitor in an office corner showed grainy footage. Ryan's partner, a young officer named Lena Brooks, short, athletic, with light brown skin and a tight braid tucked under her cap, pulled up the recordings. Lena had the kind of focused expression that made you believe she didn't miss details, and the kind of impatience that made you grateful she was on your side. On the screen, Troy arriving. Troy's men with the crowbar. Troy shouting. Troy trying to force entry. Clear as rainwater. Ryan's radio chirped. "We've got Troy Maddox in custody," a voice reported. And two others. Emily exhaled a shaky breath that sounded like her soul finally sitting down. Jack looked at Rex. The dog's chest rose and fell, slow now. His eyes stayed on Jack, as if checking whether this victory was real or just another trick the world liked to play. "It's over," Jack told him softly. Rex's ears twitched. He blinked once. Then, because even heroes are allowed to be ridiculous, he tried to sit and immediately sneezed again, spraying rainwater off his muzzle like a comedian refusing to leave the stage. Emily let out a breath that became a laugh, surprised by itself. Jack's mouth lifted too, the old grief inside him loosening one knot. Back at the clinic, Emily removed the metal shard under proper sedation. It was a jagged piece from a crude trap, the kind used to snatch and hold. She treated the paw, cleaned the shock burns around Rex's mouth, and documented everything with photos for the report. Ryan took statements, took the footage, and promised charges that matched the truth. Threats, trespassing, attempted theft, and the ugly thread beneath it, illegal trafficking and using animals as tools. When morning came, Savannah looked washed clean. The storm had moved on like a bad dream, leaving the air salty and bright. Sunlight painted the clinic walls in pale gold, gentle as forgiveness. Ryan met Jack outside and handed him a card. "You did good," he said, then added with a faint smile, "And that dog, he's something." Jack looked at Rex, now wrapped in a clean bandage, standing a little steadier, eyes still sharp. "He's not something," Jack said. "He's someone." Emily joined them, tired but glowing with relief. He needs a home, she said quietly. A real one. Jack stared at the dog, this wounded guardian, this silent thunder, and felt the strangest thing bloom in his chest. Not pity, not duty. Something warmer, something risky. At 60, Jack said, voice rough. I thought my chapters were done. Rex stepped closer and rested his heavy head against Jack's thigh like a seal on a promise. Jack looked up at the bright morning and let the words come out like truth. Guess not. Weeks later, Rex healed. The scar around his neck faded beneath new fur. Though it never fully disappeared, some marks become reminders rather than wounds. Jack adopted him officially, signing papers with hands that trembled less than they had in years. And on quiet afternoons, Jack and Rex visited a local nursing home, not as a spectacle, but as a balm. Rex moved slowly between wheelchairs, letting old hands rest on his head, letting loneliness soften. Jack watched those faces light up and understood something simple and mythic. Love doesn't ask whether you're ready. It arrives anyway. Sometimes on 4 paws, sometimes with a sneeze. One evening, Jack hung a framed photo of his younger self in uniform on the wall, his eyes hard, his smile rare. Beside it, he placed a new photo, Rex on the porch, head on Jack's boot, sunlight spilling over both of them like peace finally keeping its promise. Jack didn't look at the camera when he spoke, as if speaking to the man he used to be. Some war's end, he said softly, so you can learn how to live. He scratched Rex behind the ears. Rex huffed contentedly, as if agreeing. And some dogs, Jack added, voice breaking into a small smile, show up to remind you. You still know how to love. Some nights feel ordinary, just rain on the pavement and streetlights blinking through the dark, until you realize you've been walking through a turning point God quietly prepared. Jack thought his life was down to getting by. Rex thought the world was nothing but ropes, shadows, and hands that hurt. And yet, the moment they found each other, a man who had survived war and a dog who had survived cruelty, something gentle stepped in between the storm and their fear. People call it luck, but sometimes it's a miracle from God, delivered in the most everyday way. A soft whimper beneath a hanging oak. One person choosing to stop instead of keep walking. One hand refusing to abandon what's wounded. God doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes he arrives as a whisper. Stay, help, love. And when we listen, a life gets saved and a heart gets rescued too. If you're tired today, if you're lonely, overwhelmed, or carrying a quiet pain nobody sees, remember this story. Your miracle may not come as something huge. It might come as a phone call you didn't expect, an apology you finally give, a meal you share, an umbrella offered to a stranger, or a soul, human or animal, who needs to believe goodness is still real. And if Jack and Rex's story touched you, help spread that light like a small candle in the dark. Share this video with someone who could use hope right now. Leave a comment. What form has God's miracle taken in your life? And subscribe to the channel so we can keep telling stories that heal. Stories that remind us love still wins. I'm praying that God blesses you and your family, that He protects you on every road, heals the wounds you carry in silence, and sends you the right help at the right time, just like He sent Jack to Rex. Ooh.